The day I realized my son saw me as nothing more than a walking ATM was the day he asked me for $15,000 without even looking up from his phone. No hello, no how are you, Mom? Just, I found this car I need, can you send the money by tomorrow? As casually as if he were asking me to pass the salt. That's when I knew. 12 years of loving him, raising him, sacrificing for him had somehow transformed me from a mother into a transaction. And the worst part? I'd let it happen. Before I go any deeper into this, I would like to know where you are watching from today. Drop a comment below and let me know your city, your country, wherever you are. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. My name is Nia Baptiste, and I'm 52 years old, living in Stone Mountain, Georgia, where the streets are lined with oak trees and modest dreams. This is the story of how I loved a child who wasn't mine by blood, but became mine by choice, and how that choice almost destroyed me. But more than that, this is the story of how I found myself again, how I learned that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's self-erasure. Let me take you back to the beginning, to a humid June evening 14 years ago when I met Marcus Reynolds at a work conference in downtown Atlanta. I was 38, content in my solitude, focused on my career as a senior HR director for a distribution company. I'd been single for 4 years by choice, building a life that was stable and predictable and entirely mine. Then Marcus walked into that conference room to present on logistics optimization, and something in me shifted. He had this warm, easy smile and eyes that carried a weight I recognized, the weight of loss. We talked through the entire networking hour, and by the time the bartender was wiping down the counter, he'd told me about his wife, Simone, who'd died from a brain aneurysm 3 years prior. He told me about his son, Jordan, who was 6 years old and still sleeping with the lights on because darkness reminded him of the hospital where his mother had died. Marcus's voice cracked when he talked about them, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. The pull to nurture, to fix, to love something broken back to wholeness. We married 10 months later in a small ceremony at the courthouse, with Jordan standing between us in a navy suit that was slightly too big, holding both our hands. I remember looking down at his face during the vows, at those serious brown eyes watching me, and I made him a silent promise that went deeper than the words I was saying to Marcus. I promised that little boy I would be his safe place, that I would honor his mother's memory, that I would love him like he was mine. And God help me, I meant it with every fiber of my being. Those first few years were a careful dance. Jordan would test me in the way grieving children do, leaving his toys exactly where I'd trip over them, refusing to eat anything I cooked, asking for his real mom when he was angry. Each test felt like a small knife, but I never flinched. I learned to make Simone's peach cobbler from Marcus's vague instructions, burning 3 pans before I got it right. I kept her photograph on Jordan's nightstand and told him stories about how strong she must have been because he was so brave. I showed up to every parent-teacher conference, every soccer game, every award ceremony. I sat through his nightmares at 2 a.m, holding him while he cried for a woman I'd never met, but whose absence I felt in every corner of our home. Slowly, carefully, he let me in. Miss Nia became just Nia. And then, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, when he was 9 years old, it became Mom. We were in the kitchen making grilled cheese sandwiches, and he just said it. Mom, can you cut the crusts off? Like it was the most natural thing in the world. I excused myself to the bathroom and cried for 20 minutes, my hands shaking as I gripped the sink. Marcus found me there and pulled me into his arms. You did it, he whispered. You brought him back to life. I thought I'd won something precious and permanent. I didn't understand then that love could be conditional, that a child you'd bled for could one day measure your worth in dollars and cents. Marcus died when Jordan was 13. A massive heart attack in his office on a Thursday afternoon, sudden and brutal and final. One moment he was texting me about picking up Chinese food for dinner, and the next, Jordan and I were sitting in a hospital waiting room, being told there was nothing they could do. We buried him on a rainy Saturday in October, and I remember standing at that graveside thinking I couldn't survive losing another person I loved. But I had to. Because Jordan was looking at me with those devastated eyes, silently asking me if I was going to disappear too. We grieved together, Jordan and I, two people who'd already lost everything once, now losing it again. We became each other's lifeline. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and find him sitting in the dark living room, and I'd sit beside him without speaking, just existing in our shared pain. He'd come home from school with that hollow look in his eyes, and I'd make hot chocolate the way Simone used to, with extra marshmallows and a dash of cinnamon, and we'd sit at the kitchen table not talking, but being together. The night after Marcus's funeral, Jordan leaned his head on my shoulder. He was already almost as tall as me by then, and whispered, "At least I still have you, Mom." Those words wrapped around my heart like a promise. I thought our shared grief had fused us together permanently, that we'd soldered our souls in that fire and nothing could break us apart. I was wrong. The change started so gradually I didn't notice it at first. At 15, Jordan began asking for things. Small things initially, money for movies, for pizza with friends, for new cleats, for soccer, normal. Teenage requests, I told myself. Marcus had left us financially comfortable, not wealthy but stable, with a good life insurance policy and the house paid off. What was the money for, if not to give Jordan the life he deserved? But then the requests started multiplying. New sneakers, the expensive kind that cost $200, money for a class trip to Washington, D.C., a new laptop because his old one was too slow. Each time I said yes. Each time the thank you got a little less enthusiastic, a little more perfunctory, until it started disappearing altogether. He'd ask, I'd give, he'd nod and walk away, already scrolling through his phone. I told myself it was normal teenage behavior. Boys that age aren't known for their emotional eloquence. But something in my chest started to tighten every time my phone buzzed with his name. A small knot of dread that I couldn't quite name. At 16, he got his driver's license, and suddenly he needed gas money. Every week, like clockwork, a text. "Can you send me $40 for gas?" No context, no conversation, just the request. I'd send it, and sometimes I'd add a message. "How was your week? How did that history test go?" And he'd respond with one word. "Fine. Good. IDK." The distance grew like frost on a window, so slowly you don't notice until one day you can't see through it anymore. At 17, during his senior year of high school, the requests escalated. He needed money for prom, the ticket, the tux rental, the limo, flowers for his date. I paid for all of it, over $800 total. He sent me a picture that night, him and his date standing in front of the limo, both of them looking beautiful and young and alive. I stared at that photo for an hour, my heart swelling with pride and something else, something that felt like mourning. He hadn't invited me to take the pictures. He'd had his date's mother do it. I wasn't even an afterthought. When graduation came, I sat in the stands at the high school stadium, surrounded by other parents, and watched him walk across that stage. I cheered so loud my voice went hoarse, and afterward, in the parking lot, he hugged me briefly and said, "Thanks for coming," like I was a distant relative who'd done him a favor by showing up. "Jordan," I said, holding onto his arms, trying to catch his eyes. "I'm so proud of you, baby. You've worked so hard." "Yeah, thanks. Hey, can I get like $300? Some of us are going to the beach for senior week." Just like that. No transition, no pretense, just straight to the ask. I gave him the money, of course I did, and I watched him run off to his friends, laughing and free while I stood alone in that parking lot feeling like a ghost. If you're finding yourself drawn into this story, if something in it is resonating with you, I'd be so grateful if you'd take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It tells me that these stories matter, that sharing our pain and our resilience creates something meaningful. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories about family, boundaries, and finding yourself again after you've lost yourself in loving someone else, your subscription helps me keep creating them. It helps me know I'm not speaking into a void. College came that fall. Jordan got into Georgia State University in Atlanta with a decent academic scholarship that covered about half his tuition. I covered the rest without hesitation. His housing, his meal plan, his textbooks, everything. I'd been saving since Marcus died, squirreling away money specifically for this, determined that my son wouldn't drown in student debt the way so many kids do. I helped him move into his dorm on a sweltering August morning, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs, while he walked ahead with his phone pressed to his ear, laughing with some friend. His roommate's mother and I exchanged knowing looks as we made trip after trip, our children oblivious to our labor. When everything was finally unpacked, I tried to take him to lunch, to have one last meal together before I left him to his new life. "I can't, Mom. I'm meeting some people from orientation, but thanks for the help." He hugged me, quick, obligatory, and I drove the hour back to Stone Mountain with tears streaming down my face, telling myself this was normal. This was what it meant to launch a child into adulthood. They pull away. It's natural. It's healthy. But the pulling away wasn't the problem. The problem was what replaced it. Within the first month of college, Jordan called me 6 times. Every single call was a request for money. His meal plan wasn't enough. He needed money for art supplies for a class. He needed money for a campus event ticket. He needed money for a lift because he'd missed the bus. Each request came with a thin veneer of conversation. "Hey, Mom, how are you?" "Good, good, that's good. So listen." And I'd feel that knot in my chest tighten a little more. I started to notice the pattern. He never called just to talk, not once. The only time my phone lit up with his name was when he needed something. And when I'd try to extend the conversation to ask about his classes or his roommate or whether he was making friends, I'd get monosyllabic responses. Yes. No? Fine. Good. Busy. Gotta go. By the spring semester of his freshman year, I was sending him money twice a week, sometimes more. Always with the same hollow feeling in my stomach, the same question circling my mind. When did I become just a bank to him? I tried to talk to my best friend Keisha about it. We'd been friends since high school, and she'd watched my entire journey with Jordan from the beginning. We met for lunch one Saturday at our favorite soul food spot in Decatur, and over fried catfish and collard greens I finally broke down. "I don't know what I'm doing wrong," I said, my voice cracking. "He only calls when he needs money, Keisha. That's it. That's all I am to him now." Keisha put down her fork and looked at me with those sharp, loving eyes. "Nia, baby, you're not doing anything wrong. He is. But maybe I'm not giving him enough. Maybe he's still processing losing Marcus, and this is how it's coming out." "Stop!" She reached across the table and gripped my hand. "Stop making excuses for him. That boy is 19 years old enough to know that his mother is a human being with feelings, old enough to pick up the phone and say, 'I love you,' without asking for something in return. He's just busy. Too busy to call his mother? Too busy to show basic gratitude? Girl, please, I've watched you pour everything into that child. Your time, your money, your heart. And what's he giving you back? Nothing but requests and distance." The truth of her words landed in my chest like stones, but I couldn't accept them. Not yet. Because accepting them would mean accepting that the relationship I'd built my entire life around was hollow, that the child I'd loved as my own saw me as nothing more than a resource. I went home that night and lay awake, staring at the ceiling of the bedroom I used to share with Marcus, and I let myself think the thought I'd been avoiding for months. Jordan doesn't love me. Not really. He loves what I can do for him. The tears that came then were different from the grief tears I'd cried for Marcus, or the worried tears I'd cried when Jordan was small and suffering. These were tears of a different kind of loss, the loss of an illusion, the death of a hope I'd been clinging to with everything I had. Sophomore year was worse. Jordan moved into an off-campus apartment with 3 friends, and suddenly he needed money for rent, for utilities, for groceries, for a parking pass, for furniture. The requests came in a steady stream, sometimes multiple in one day. I paid his portion of the deposit. I paid his first month's rent when his roommates' parents paid theirs. I sent money for a desk, a mattress, kitchen supplies. Each time I told myself this was the last time, that once he was settled, the requests would slow down. They didn't. By November of his sophomore year, I'd sent him over $8,000 beyond his tuition and housing costs. $8,000 in 6 months. I started tracking it in a spreadsheet, not because I wanted the money back, but because I needed to see it, to make the invisible visible, to prove to myself that this was real and not just my imagination. The spreadsheet became a catalog of my own erasure. $40 here, $200 there, $500, $300, $1,000. Next to each transaction, I started adding notes. Called to ask how I was doing, no. Said thank you, no. Offered to visit, no. Columns of no's building like a wall between us. In December, he came home for Christmas break, and I was so excited I could barely sleep the night before. I decorated the house the way he used to love when he was little. Lights on every surface, the tree, covered in ornaments we'd collected over the years, including the handmade ones from his elementary school days. I'd bought his favorite snacks, stocked the fridge with everything he loved, planned a whole menu of his favorite meals. He arrived 3 hours later than he'd said he would, walking through the door with a duffel bag and barely a greeting. "Hey, Mom." "Jordan, baby, you're home." I moved to hug him, and he tolerated it, his body stiff, his attention already elsewhere. "Yeah, I'm exhausted. I'm gonna take a nap." He disappeared upstairs, and I stood in my living room surrounded by decorations and Christmas music, feeling like an idiot. He slept until dinner, came down long enough to eat the pot roast I'd made, then announced he was meeting up with some high school friends. "Already? You just got home. I thought maybe we could watch a movie or, 'Mom, I haven't seen these people in months. I'll be back later.'" He didn't come back until 2 in the morning. I know because I was lying awake, listening for the sound of his car in the driveway. The next 5 days followed the same pattern. He'd sleep late, eat the food I prepared, then leave to be with friends. When he was home, he was on his phone, barely present, responding to my attempts at conversation with grunts and one-word answers. On the 3rd night, I finally asked him if something was wrong, if I'd done something to upset him. He looked up from his phone, genuinely confused. "What? No. Why? You just seem distant. I feel like I barely see you, and when I do, you're not really here." He sighed like I was being unreasonable. "I'm just tired, Mom. College is a lot. Can you not make this into a thing?" A thing? My loneliness, my hurt, my need to connect with my son. It was a thing. An inconvenience. An overreaction. I let it drop. Because what was the alternative? To push, to demand, to force him to engage with me? You can't make someone love you. You can't require connection, and I was terrified that if I pushed too hard, I'd lose him completely. On Christmas morning, I gave him the gifts I'd carefully chosen: a new watch, some clothes, a fancy coffee maker for his apartment, and an envelope with $500 cash because I knew he'd need it, and I didn't want him to have to ask. He thanked me, opened everything with moderate interest, then said, "Oh, I didn't get you anything. Sorry, I've been swamped." "That's okay," I said automatically, the words bitter in my mouth. "I understand." But I didn't understand. How do you forget to get your mother a Christmas gift? How do you show up to Christmas empty-handed without even an apology or an explanation beyond, "I've been swamped"? That afternoon, while Jordan was in his room gaming with his friends online, I could hear him laughing, actually laughing, something he hadn't done once with me. I sat in my bathroom and cried as quietly as I could, the cinnamon-scented candle burning on the counter. I'd thought the scent would bring back good memories, just made everything worse. All those Saturday mornings of cinnamon rolls, of little Jordan in 2 big pajamas, of him grinning at me like I'd hung the moon. Where did that child go? When did I lose him? He left 2 days before New Year's, claiming he had plans with friends in Atlanta. I helped him carry his stuff to his car, and he gave me a quick hug and a, "Thanks for everything, Mom." That felt rehearsed. I watched his taillights disappear down the street, and I knew something had fundamentally broken. I just didn't know if it could ever be fixed. Now, I want to pause here and ask you something. Have you ever experienced this kind of relationship? Maybe not with a child, but with someone you loved, someone you gave everything to, only to realize they saw you as a resource rather than a person. Have you felt that particular pain of being invisible to someone who should see you more clearly than anyone? If you have a story, or even just thoughts about this kind of dynamic, I'd love to hear them in the comments below. Sometimes sharing our experiences helps us feel less alone. It helps me knowing I'm not the only one who's walked this particular path of loving someone who couldn't or wouldn't love me back the way I needed. Spring semester of his sophomore year, something in me started to harden. Not in a bad way, or maybe it was bad, I don't know, but in a protective way, like my heart was growing scar tissue. The requests for money kept coming, and I kept sending it, but I started asking questions, not accusatory, just curious. What do you need this for? Have you looked into whether you can work more hours at your campus job? What's your budget looking like? He didn't like the questions. "Why are you suddenly being weird about money?" he asked during one call, irritation sharp in his voice. "I'm not being weird. I'm just trying to understand what you need." "I need money for rent, Mom. That's what I need. Can you send it or not?" The "or not" hung in the air like a threat, as if the alternative, me saying no, was unthinkable. And maybe that was the problem. Maybe I'd trained him so thoroughly to expect yes that no wasn't even a concept in his mind. "I'll send it," I said, my voice flat. "But Jordan, we need to talk about this, about you budgeting better, about—" "I gotta go, thanks." He hung up before I could finish. I sent the money, and I hated myself for it. My therapist, yes, I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Michelle Williams, a Black woman in her 60s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense way of asking the questions I was afraid to ask myself. She helped me start to see the pattern. "You're trying to earn his love," she said during one of our early sessions. "Every time you give him money, you're hoping it'll buy you connection, appreciation, the relationship you desperately want." "I'm not trying to buy his love," I protested. "I'm just helping him. That's what mothers do." "Is it?" She leaned back in, her chair, watching me. "Do mothers also erase themselves? Do they also accept being treated as less than human? Because that's what's happening here, Nia. You're allowing him to treat you like a vending machine. Put in the right code, get the money, no interaction required." The words hit me like a slap. Because she was right. That's exactly what was happening. "But if I don't help him," I said, my voice breaking, "what if he suffers? What if he can't pay his rent or buy food? What kind of mother would I be if I let that happen?" "A mother who believes her child is capable," Dr. Williams said gently. A mother who teaches him that actions have consequences, that relationships require reciprocity. Right now, you're teaching him that he can treat you however he wants and still get what he needs from you. Is that the lesson you want him to learn? I cried in her office that day. Big, ugly, chest-heaving sobs. Because the truth was, I was terrified. Terrified that if I stopped being useful, I'd stop being loved. Terrified that the fragile thread connecting me to Jordan, thin as it was, would snap completely if I stopped paying to maintain it. But beneath the fear, something else was growing. Anger. I was angry. Furious, actually. At Jordan, yes, but mostly at myself. At how thoroughly I'd erased my own needs, my own worth, in service of a child who couldn't even be bothered to ask how I was doing. At how I'd martyred myself on the altar of motherhood and called it love. The tipping point came in March of his sophomore year. Jordan called me on a Thursday evening, and I saw his name flash on my screen with that familiar mix of hope and dread. Hey, Mom. Hi, baby, how are you? Good, good. Listen, I've got some amazing news. I found this car, a 2018 Honda Accord, super clean, low miles, and the guy is selling it for $15,000. It's a steal. My stomach dropped. Jordan, you have a car. Yeah, but it's old and always breaking down. This is an investment, you know. Something reliable that'll last me through college and beyond. I start job hunting next year, and I need to look professional. $15,000. On top of the tens of thousands I'd already given him, on top of tuition and housing and the constant stream of smaller requests. That's a lot of money, I said carefully. I know, but think of it as an investment in my future. And I'll pay you back once I graduate and get a job. I promise. That promise. I'd heard versions of it before. They all ended the same way. With me out money, and Jordan acting like the debt had never existed. Jordan, I need to think about this. The guy needs to know by tomorrow. He's got other people interested. Of course he did. The pressure tactic, the urgency, the implication that if I didn't act immediately, I'd be costing him this opportunity. Then I guess he'll sell it to someone else, I said, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. Because I'm not making a $15,000 decision overnight. Silence on the other end. Then, are you serious right now? Very serious. Mom, this is important. I need this. And I need time to think about it. I'll call you this weekend with my answer. Whatever. His voice was cold, dismissive. I'll figure something else out. He hung up. I sat on my couch, phone in hand, shaking. Not from fear, but from something else. Something that felt like the beginning of a boundary. I didn't call him that weekend. I made him wait 4 days, and when I finally did call, I told him I'd give him $10,000 toward the car. 2/3 of what he'd asked for. He'd need to figure out the rest himself through savings or a small personal loan or by choosing a cheaper car. $10,000? His voice was incredulous. That's not enough. Then you'll need to make up the difference. Get a part-time job. Ask your roommates if they want to go in on a shared vehicle. Look at cheaper options. You're an adult, Jordan. You can figure this out. I can't believe you're doing this. After everything what? The anger I'd been suppressing for months bubbled up. After everything I've done for you, after the tens of thousands of dollars I've sent, after paying your entire tuition and housing, after raising you and loving you and showing up for you even when you can barely be bothered to respond to my texts, that everything? Silence. I'm giving you $10,000, I continued, my voice shaking now. That's more money than most people see at once in their entire lives. And you're acting like I'm withholding from you, like I owe you more, like my job is to fund your every want without question. You're my mother, he said. and there was something ugly in his voice. That's what mothers do. They help their kids. And what do kids do, Jordan? In this dynamic, what's your responsibility? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you think your only job is to ask, and mine is to give. No gratitude, no reciprocity, no actual relationship beyond you needing things, and me providing them. I didn't ask you to marry my dad. I didn't ask you to raise me. You chose that. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually gasped, my hand flying to my chest as if I could stop the pain from entering. You're right, I said quietly, tears streaming down my face now. I did choose that. I chose to love you. I chose to be there for you when your world fell apart. I chose to sacrifice and provide and show up over and over and over again. And you know what? I don't regret it. But that doesn't mean I owe you everything I have for the rest of my life. That doesn't mean you get to treat me like an ATM and justify it by saying I chose to be your mother. If you're going to hold it over my head, I'm not holding anything over your head. My voice cracked. I'm asking to be seen as a human being. I'm asking for basic respect and consideration. I'm asking you to treat me like I matter. Beyond what I can give you financially, is that really too much to ask? He was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat, emotionless. Fine. Send the 10,000. I'll figure out the rest. He didn't say thank you. He didn't acknowledge anything I'd said. He just took what he could get and hung up. I sat in the silence of my living room, my whole body shaking, and felt something inside me break open. Not break apart. Break open. Like a cocoon splitting to let something new emerge. I transferred the $10,000 the next day, and then I didn't hear from Jordan for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of silence. No, I got the car, thanks. No, just wanted to say hi. Nothing. And in that silence, I started to see everything clearly for the first time. He'd bought the car. I knew because I saw photos on his Instagram, him posing next to a silver Honda Accord, caption, "New whip, who dis?" His friends commented with fire emojis and congratulations, not one mention of me. Not one acknowledgement of where the money had come from. I stared at that photo for hours, my thumb hovering over the like button, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't perform approval for being erased. I couldn't congratulate him on something he'd purchased with my money while refusing to even thank me. Keisha came over that night and found me sitting in the dark, phone in hand, crying. "Oh, baby," she said, sitting beside me and pulling me into her arms. "What happened?" I told her everything. The car, the conversation, the Instagram post, the silence. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. "You know what you have to do," she finally said. "I can't cut him off. He's my son. I'm not saying cut him off. I'm saying stop participating in your own disrespect. Stop sending money. Stop accepting breadcrumbs of his attention. Stop settling for being treated like you don't matter." But what if he never speaks to me again? Then he's showing you who he is, and Nia, honey, sometimes the most loving thing we can do, for them and for ourselves, is to believe people when they show us who they are. I knew she was right. In my bones, in my gut, in every fiber of my being, I knew. But knowing and doing are two very different things. The decision crystallized 3 days later. Jordan texted me, not called. Texted, "Hey, can you send me 500 for textbooks?" No greeting. No, "How are you?" Just the request. As if the previous conversation had never happened. As if I was a machine programmed to dispense money on demand. I stared at that text for an hour. My fingers hovering over the keyboard, typing and deleting responses, each one trying to strike the impossible balance between firm and loving. Finally, I wrote, "No." Just that. One word. No explanation, no justification, just a simple boundary. His response came 30 seconds later. Seriously? Me. Seriously? Him. Why not? Me. Because I'm not doing this anymore. Him. Doing what? Helping your son? Me. I'll always help. You, Jordan, but I won't continue to fund a relationship where I'm nothing but a bank. If you want my help, you need to show me you value me as a person. That means regular communication that doesn't involve asking for money. That means showing basic gratitude and respect. That means treating me like I matter. The 3 dots appeared and disappeared multiple times. Then, you know what? Fine. I don't need you. I'll figure it out myself. And that was it. Silence. Days became weeks. Weeks became a month. I watched his Instagram stories, him at parties, at restaurants, living his life completely unbothered by my absence. Every post felt like confirmation of what I'd feared. I was never necessary. I was just convenient. But something strange happened in that silence. I started to breathe again. The constant knot of dread in my stomach started to loosen. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes, stopped jumping at every notification, stopped existing in a state of perpetual anxiety about what he'd ask for next. I started living my own life again. I went to dinner with Keisha and didn't spend the whole time talking about Jordan. I picked up hobbies I'd abandoned, gardening, reading, taking long walks in Stone Mountain Park. I said yes when a colleague invited me to join a book club. I bought myself things without feeling guilty about spending money on myself instead of saving it for Jordan's next request. And slowly, painfully, I started to rebuild my sense of self. Dr. Williams helped me understand something crucial during this time. You've been trying to fill a hole in Jordan that only he can fill, she said. His mother died. His father died, and no amount of your love or money can fix that loss. The only person who can heal Jordan is Jordan. You can't do it for him. But I'm his mother now, I protested, though the words felt hollow even as I said them. Are you? Dr. Williams asked gently. Or are you a woman he's learned to use? Because motherhood requires relationship. It requires mutuality. What you're describing isn't motherhood. It's martyrdom. The word landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading out through everything I thought I knew about myself. I'd been martyring myself, sacrificing everything, my money, my self-respect, my dignity, on the altar of a relationship that existed mostly in my imagination. Jordan didn't see me as his mother. Maybe he never really had. Maybe I'd been so desperate to be needed, to matter, that I'd accepted the role of ATM and convinced myself it was love. His graduation approached in May. I'd bought tickets months ago before everything fell apart. I debated not going, couldn't bear the thought of sitting in that stadium, watching him celebrate a milestone I'd financially made possible while he pretended I didn't exist. But I went. Because despite everything, I needed closure. I needed to see him walk across that stage and acknowledge to myself that I'd done what I promised all those odd. Years ago, I'd gotten him to this moment. The rest was up to him. I sat alone in the stands, surrounded by cheering families, and when they called his name, when Jordan Reynolds crossed that stage in his cap and gown, I stood and I clapped. Not loudly, not enthusiastically, but I acknowledged it. And then I left. I didn't text him congratulations. I didn't try to meet him afterward. I just went home, and that night, I made myself cinnamon rolls for the first time in years. Not for Jordan, for me. And I ate them slowly, savoring every bite, reclaiming that smell, that taste, that Saturday morning ritual as mine. 3 days later, my phone rang at 11 at night. Jordan's name on the screen. My heart did its stupid, stubborn leap of hope before I forced it back down. Hello? Mom? His voice was small, young. Nothing like the cold indifference of our last conversations. I need to tell you something. Every instinct in me screamed to ask what was wrong, to promise I'd fix it, to slip right back into that familiar groove of rescuing him. But I'd learned something in these months of silence. I'd learned to wait, to listen, to let him come to me instead of always reaching for him. "I'm listening," I said quietly. He paused, and I heard him take a shaky breath. "I got a job, like a real job, engineering position at a tech company here in Atlanta. Good salary, benefits, the whole thing." "Congratulations," I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, I was proud of him. "That's wonderful, Jordan." "Yeah, thanks." Another pause, longer this time. "They took me out to dinner last week, the whole team, kind of a welcome thing, and my supervisor, she's this older black woman, probably in her 50s, and she was telling us about her kids. She's got 3 of them, all adults now, and she was talking about how one of them went through this phase where he only called when he needed something, how he took her for granted, treated her like she was just there to bankroll his life." I held my breath, my heart hammering against my ribs. "And she said," his voice cracked, "she said it took her cutting him off for him to realize what he'd lost, that sometimes the people who love us most have to stop enabling us before we can grow up. And Mom, I sat there listening to her, and all I could think about was you, about how I've treated you." Tears were streaming down my face, but I didn't make a sound. I just listened. "I was so angry when you said no about the textbooks," he continued. "So angry that you weren't just giving me what I wanted like you always did. And I told myself you were being selfish, that you were holding money over my head, that you were the problem. But then weeks went by and you didn't reach out. You didn't try to fix things or apologize or convince me to talk to you. You just let me go, and that scared me more than anything. Jordan, please, let me finish. I need to say this." He took a shuddering breath. "I've been thinking about it constantly. About all the times I called you just to ask for money, about how I barely talked to you at Christmas, about that Instagram post with the car where I didn't even mention you. Mom, I saw you at graduation. In the stands. You were alone and you stayed for like 10 minutes after I walked and then you left. And I realized you'd given up on me, that I'd finally pushed you so far that you were done." "I haven't given up on you," I said softly. "But I did give up on being used. Those are 2 different things." I know that now. And Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so fucking sorry." He was crying now, openly weeping. "You raised me. You loved me when you didn't have to. You were there for every single thing, and I treated you like an ATM. That woman, my supervisor, she said her son told her he finally understood that his mom wasn't a resource. She was a person, that she had feelings and needs and a whole life beyond him. And it hit me that I'd never thought about you that way. I'd never asked myself what you needed or wanted or felt. I just took and expected you to keep giving." I was sobbing now too, years of hurt and anger and love all pouring out at once. "Do you have any idea how invisible you made me feel? How much it hurt every time you called only to ask for money? How lonely I was, Jordan. I lost Marcus too. I lost the only partner I'd had. And instead of grieving together, instead of supporting each other, you turned me into a bank and I let you because I was so terrified of losing you too." "I know. God, Mom, I know. And I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I don't even know if I deserve forgiveness. But I need you to know that I see it now. I see what I did, and I hate myself for it." "I don't want you to hate yourself," I said, my voice breaking. "I want you to grow. I want you to understand that relationships require reciprocity, that love isn't one-sided, that you're a person," he finished. "Not just my mom, not just someone who's supposed to take care of me. You're a whole person with your own life and feelings and needs. I'm 22 years old, and I'm just now understanding that. How messed up is that?" "You're understanding it now," I said gently. "That's what matters." We were both quiet for a long moment, just breathing together across the phone line. "Can I?" Jordan's voice was hesitant. "Can I take you to dinner? Not to ask you for anything, just to see you, to talk, to try to start over, maybe?" Everything in me wanted to say yes immediately, but I'd learned something about boundaries, about protecting myself. "Let me think about it," I said, "not because I'm punishing you, but because I need to make sure I'm ready." "Okay. Yeah, that's fair." He paused. "Mom, I love you. I know I haven't said it in forever. I know I haven't shown it. But I do. I love you." The words cracked something open in my chest. "I love you too, baby. I always have. Even when I was angry, even when I was hurt, I never stopped loving you." After we hung up, I sat in my dark living room for hours, letting everything wash over me. The pain, the hope, the fear, the cautious optimism. This wasn't a Hollywood ending where one conversation fixed everything. This was real life, messy and complicated and uncertain, but it was a beginning. Maybe. I called Dr. Williams the next day and told her about the conversation. She listened carefully, then asked, "How do you feel?" "Scared," I admitted. "Hopeful. Angry still. Relieved. Everything all at once." "That's appropriate," she said. "This is a first step, Nia, not a resolution. Jordan's awareness is important, but awareness without changed behavior is just empty words. You need to see if he follows through, if he actually does the work of rebuilding your relationship with actions, not just apologies." She was right. I knew she was right. I waited 3 days before texting Jordan back. "Dinner would be nice, but I need you to understand something first. I'm not going back to the way things were. I'm not reopening the bank. If we're going to rebuild our relationship, it has to be based on mutual respect and genuine connection. Can you accept that?" His response came immediately. "Yes, I understand. Thank you for giving me a chance." We met the following Saturday at a small Ethiopian restaurant in Decatur, neutral territory. I got there first and sat in a booth near the window, my hands shaking as I watched the door. When Jordan walked in, I barely recognized him. Not because he looked different physically, but because of the expression on his face. He looked nervous, uncertain, young in a way he hadn't seemed in years. He slid into the booth across from me, and for a moment, we just looked at each other. "Hi, Mom," he said softly. "Hi, baby. I ordered ahead and paid for everything already. I wanted you to know this isn't... I'm not here to ask you for anything. I just wanted to see you." It was such a small gesture, but it meant everything. "Thank you." We talked for 3 hours. Really talked, maybe for the first time in years. He told me about his new job, about the apartment he was renting with a roommate from college, about how he'd been going to therapy. His company offered it as a benefit, and how his therapist had been helping him understand his behavior patterns. "She helped me see how I'd been using money as a substitute for dealing with my grief," he said, picking at his injera. "Like, as long as I could call you and get what I needed financially, I didn't have to actually face how much I missed Dad, or how scared I was of losing you too. It was easier to keep you at a distance and just extract what I needed than to actually be close to you and risk that pain again." "And the entitlement?" I asked gently. "The expectation that I owed you?" He winced. "That's the part I'm most ashamed of. I think I think I convinced myself that you owed me because you chose to be my mom. Like you signed up for it, so you were obligated to give me everything I asked for. I never thought about what you needed or wanted. I never thought about you as a person separate from being my mother. Do you see me that way now? I asked, needing to know. I'm trying to, he said honestly. I'm really trying. My therapist says it's a process, unlearning these patterns. But yes, Mom, I see you. I see that you're a woman who's been through incredible loss, who chose to love a kid who wasn't hers, who sacrificed so much, and who deserved so much better than what I gave you. I reached across the table and took his hand. I don't need you to be perfect, Jordan. I just need you to try, to show up, to see me. I will, he said, squeezing my hand. I promise. And I know my promises haven't meant much lately, but I mean this one. I'm going to do better. The weeks that followed were different. Jordan actually texted me, not just when he needed something, but just to check in. How was your day? Saw this meme and thought of you? Remember that TV show we used to watch? The new season is out. Small things, but they felt monumental. He called me once a week and we'd talk for an hour or more. He asked about my life, my job, what I was doing for fun. He told me about his work, his struggles adjusting to the corporate world, his budgeting challenges as he learned to live on his own income. And when he hit those challenges, he didn't immediately call me for money. He called to talk through the problem, to ask for advice, to let me be a mother in ways that didn't involve my wallet. It wasn't perfect. There were moments when I could feel him wanting to ask, when the old patterns tried to reassert themselves. But he caught himself. He'd pause, take a breath, and say, "Sorry, I'm working on this." And we'd laugh, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes genuinely, and move forward. 3 months after our dinner, Jordan asked if he could come home for the weekend. Not because I need anything, he clarified quickly. Just because I miss you, and the house, and maybe those cinnamon rolls if you're feeling generous. He came on a Friday evening in August, pulling into the driveway just as the sun was setting. I watched him get out of his car, that silver Honda Accord that had once been a symbol of everything wrong between us, and I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness yet, exactly, but the possibility of it. We spent the weekend doing simple things, cooking together, watching movies, talking, sitting in comfortable silence. On Saturday morning, I made cinnamon rolls, and Jordan came downstairs in pajama pants and a t-shirt, looking almost like the little boy I'd once known. "Morning, Mom," he said, kissing my cheek before pouring himself coffee. We sat at the kitchen table eating warm cinnamon rolls, and he looked at me with something in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. Genuine affection. "Thank you," he said, quietly. "For the cinnamon rolls?" I asked, smiling. "For that, and for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to, and for loving me enough to say no. I know that must have been so hard." "It was the hardest thing I've ever done," I admitted. "Harder than losing Marcus in some ways, because choosing to step back, to let you struggle, to risk losing you completely, that went against every instinct I had." "But it was the right thing," he said. "I needed it. I needed to hit that wall and realize I'd been taking advantage of the best thing in my life." I felt tears welling up again. "You weren't taking advantage of the best thing in your life. You were taking advantage of me. They're not the same. I'm a person, Jordan, not a concept or a resource. Me, Nia, a woman who had her own life and dreams before you came along, who chose to build her world around you, who deserves to be seen and valued for who she is, not what she can provide." "I know," he said, reaching across the table to take my hand. "I know that now, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving I understand that." That afternoon we worked in the garden together, something we used to do when he was younger, before everything got complicated. I was weeding the tomato plants, and Jordan was mulching the flower beds, and he said, almost offhandedly, "I've been saving money." "Oh?" I tried to keep my voice neutral. "Yeah, I wanted to pay you back for the car. Not all at once. I can't afford that yet. But I've been putting aside money every paycheck. I've saved about $2,000 so far. I was thinking I could start sending you payments, maybe $500 a month, until it's paid back." I stopped weeding and looked at him. He was focused on his mulching, not looking at me, his jaw set with determination. "You don't have to do that," I said softly. "I know I don't have to, but I want to. You gave me that money when I didn't deserve it, when I was treating you terribly and you still showed up for me. The least I can do is pay you back." "Jordan, please, Mom. Let me do this. It's important to me. I need to know I'm not just taking from you anymore. I need to know I can give back, even in small ways." I felt something break open in my chest. Not the painful breaking of betrayal, but the tender breaking of hope taking root. "Okay," I said. "If it's important to you, okay." He looked up then, meeting my eyes, and smiled. A real smile, the kind I remembered from years ago. "Thank you." We finished the gardening, and that evening, sitting on the back porch with iced tea as the fireflies started their evening dance, Jordan said something that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. "You know what I realized?" he said, watching the fireflies. "You didn't have to love me. Like, legally, biologically, you had no obligation to me. When Dad died, you could have walked away, set me up with some money, made sure I was okay, and just left. No one would have blamed you. But you stayed. You chose me every single day, even when I made it hard, especially when I made it hard. And I took that for granted because I thought it was automatic. I thought love was just something that existed, not something that had to be tended and reciprocated and honored." "Love isn't automatic," I agreed. "It's a choice we make every day. And yes, I chose you, but Jordan, you have to understand, I can't keep choosing someone who doesn't choose me back. That's not love. That's self-destruction." "I'm choosing you now," he said, turning to look at me. "I know it's late. I know I should have been choosing you all along, but I'm choosing you now, Mom, and I'm going to keep choosing you." The months continued to pass, and slowly, carefully, we rebuilt something new. Not the relationship we'd had when he was young. That was gone, and maybe that was okay. This new thing we were building was more honest, more balanced, built on a foundation of mutual respect, rather than obligation and guilt. Jordan sent me his first payment of $500 in September. I cried when I saw the transaction notification, not because of the money itself, but because of what it represented, his willingness to be accountable, to give back, to see our relationship as something that required his investment, not just mine. He came home once a month, and each visit felt more natural than the last. We developed new rhythms, new traditions. Sunday morning phone calls became our thing. He'd call while making breakfast, and we'd talk about the week ahead. He started sending me photos randomly, little moments from his life he wanted to share. Him trying a new restaurant, a funny sign he'd seen, a sunset that made him think of me. Were there setbacks? Yes. There was the time he called asking if I could spot him $200 for car repairs, and I had to remind him, gently but firmly, that the bank was still closed. He got frustrated, hung up, but called back 20 minutes later to apologize and ask for advice on finding a cheaper mechanic instead. Progress, not perfection. There was the time he forgot my birthday, and I felt that old hurt rise up, the confirmation that I still didn't matter. But he called 3 days later, mortified, explaining that work had been chaotic and he'd completely lost track of dates, and could he please take me to dinner that weekend to make up for it? And he did. He drove to Stone Mountain, took me to a nice restaurant, and gave me a card he'd clearly spent time picking out, with a long, handwritten note inside about what I meant to him. By the time his first work anniversary came around, Jordan was a different person. Or maybe he was becoming the person he was supposed to be all along, the person my enabling had prevented him from becoming. He invited me to his company's family day in December, and I met his colleagues, his supervisor, that woman who'd inadvertently started his awakening, and I watched him introduce me with pride. "This is my mom, Nia," he said, his arm around my shoulders. "She's the reason I'm here." His supervisor smiled at me, and there was something knowing in her eyes. "He talks about you all the time," she said. "The lessons you taught him, the boundaries you set. You should be very proud." I was proud, but more than that, I was healing. Now, as I'm sitting here sharing this story with you, it's been almost a year since that late-night phone call when Jordan first apologized. We're not perfect. We're still learning each other, still navigating this new dynamic. There are moments when old fears rise up, when he calls and I hold my breath waiting for a request, when too much time passes between contacts and I wonder if he's slipping back into old patterns. But mostly, there's peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing I stood up for myself, that I valued myself enough to demand better, that I taught my son one of the most important lessons he'll ever learn, that the people who love you are not resources to be mined, they're human beings to be cherished. Dr. Williams told me something in one of our recent sessions that I think about often. She said, "You taught Jordan that love without boundaries is not sustainable. That's a gift, even though it didn't feel like one at the time. You gave him the opportunity to grow into someone capable of real relationship, not just extraction." And she was right. By saying no, by stepping back, by refusing to participate in my own erasure, I didn't lose my son. I gave him the space to find himself. And in that space, he found his way back to me, not as a child dependent on his mother's resources, but as a man capable of reciprocal love. The last payment for the car came through last week. Jordan called me immediately after sending it. "It's done," he said, and I could hear the emotion in his voice. "I paid you back." "You did," I said softly. "I'm proud of you." "I'm proud of me too," he said. "But more than that, I'm grateful. For you. For everything. And I know I tell you this all the time now, but I need you to really hear it. I love you, Mom, not for what you can give me, just for who you are. For being brave enough to be yourself, even when that meant disappointing me. Thank you for loving me enough to let me grow up." I'm crying as I tell you this even now, because that's what I needed to hear all along, that I was enough just as I was, without the money, without the constant giving, without erasing myself to make space for him. If you've stayed with me through this entire story, if you've felt any of this in your own life, I want you to hear this. You are not selfish for having boundaries. You are not unloving for demanding reciprocity. You are not a bad mother, daughter, sister, friend for refusing to be used. Love that requires you to disappear is not love. It's martyrdom, and you deserve better. If this story has touched you, if it's helped you see something in your own life, more clearly, I'd be so grateful if you'd like this video and subscribe to the channel. These stories, our stories, they matter. They create bridges between us, reminding us that we're not alone in our struggles, in our pain, in our journey toward reclaiming ourselves. I'm Nia Baptiste, and this is my story of loving a son who needed to lose me before he could truly see me. It's a story of pain and growth, of boundaries and rebirth. It's a story of learning that the most loving thing we can do sometimes is to stop enabling, to step back, to trust that the people we love are capable of more than we've been allowing them to be. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And remember, you are worthy of love that sees you, values you, and honors you. Never settle for less. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And know that your worth is not measured by what you can give, but by who you are. That's the truth I learned. And it's the truth I hope you carry with you long after this story ends.